The following is a fan-based review. All materials discussed are property of Toei Inc., Bandai, and Saban Entertainment.
Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of the Tokucast Reviews.
Another episode. It feels like it's been such a long time since we did a series because the last couple of things that we did were movies.
They were a nice break though.
Yes. So nice. It's been 6 weeks since we did an actual series review. This time,
We're coming back to a decent one.
yes, with KyuuKyuu Sentai GoGoV 5.
GoGoV 5. I don't know.
Okay. Yes, episode...
We brought props this time.
I forgot what episode this is.
It'll be in the title.
It'll be in the title. But yes, KyuuKyuu Sentai GoGoV 5.
We bought props.
It's our first and only so far rescue-themed Sentai.
Is it really the only rescue-themed Sentai?
Yes.
Remember all the rumors for other rescue-themed Sentais we've gotten and then they've all been false?
I think we talked about this in our first Toku Talk. I want another one.
Yeah, I like public servant Sentais.
Yes, and it really works for this one. Let's go over the first thing per usual. That opening. I love it.
It's alright.
It has like that bombastic chorusness. It's like once you get to that...
Bombastic. That's a big word for Tokucast here.
It's like once it gets to that KyuuKyuu Sentai GoGoV 5 with like the background vocals and everything.
Yeah.
That it's amazing.
That was like tailor made for you.
Yeah, it's like, this is everything I ever wanted in this one thing. The ending, it exists. I mean, endings aren't really one thing that we really end up reviewing a lot.
No, because normally I skip them.
Yeah.
Not just because I don't want to listen to them, just because I want to watch the next episode.
Yeah. And
or unless you're a Q Ranger and it's awful.
I don't mind it nearly as much as I
Really? It's a dance closing.
Yeah, but it's just like, it's repetitive, so it gets stuck in your head.
So is fucking KyuuKyuu. You hated that one.
Yeah, I hate that one though.
Moving on.
But starting off for this one, we're starting in the first episode, Rescue Soldiers 5 Up. Rise Up. Ha! Same difference. But in this case, this is our first one that we reviewed on the channel for a family theme one.
I was just thinking that. Is this the first Sentai that we've reviewed where they're all family members?
Yes, we didn't review 5 Man. I've seen it, bad. But
wow, we're done.
But yeah, this one is our first family themed one. I like that. The next time that we'll end up reviewing one that has a family theme in it
is Magi Ranger
and a little bit of KyuuKyuu. But I like that. I like the family dynamic that we end up having.
Yeah, I think it was definitely better than how it was in Magi Ranger, in my opinion.
Actually, I like the one in Magi Ranger a little bit more. Because I feel like they made the red in this one just a little bit. I'm the big brother.
Fair enough.
And Magi Ranger, he was the youngest. So, there's that difference. But, in the first episode, Rescue Soldiers Rise Up, we end up getting introduced to this family. And let me go ahead and get all of their names up just to make sure we have this. So, there's the Tatsumi family with Matsui, Nagare, Sho, Daimon, and Matsuri.
How many Sentai members have we had named Daimon? I feel like we've had at least 3.
Quite a bit.
Yeah.
Sho
or Daigo. Kujaku. King.
But yes, they are all public servants, starting from the beginning, which I think is like the greatest thing the show could have done.
Yeah.
It sets that up really quickly, because there's a whole bunch of fires and everything going around.
And we're going to get more into this when we do our in comparison, but they adapt the exact same thing.
Yes.
In Lightspeed Rescue, which was great. I have one complaint, but we'll get to that in comparison.
We'll get to that.
Anyway.
But we end up getting introduced to Matsui, who is the captain of the Capital Fire Department Rescue Squad.
Ooh,
so
firefighters.
He's already a leader. His brother Nagare, who was actually in Kamen Rider Amazons, is Kamen Rider Amazons Alpha.
Cool.
He is the Capital Fire Department's chemical extinguishing team. So he handles like the chemical fire extinguishers. The brother, the third son, Sho, who is the Capital Fire Department's in the flying corps, so he pilots all the helicopters. Daimon, who is a sergeant on the Capitol Police Force, and their sister Matsuri, the only main woman in the show. She works at the National Coast Hospital as a paramedic, and also as an EMT. That's one of the first things that we do end up seeing her do in the show as well. And her and her brother Sho are really the only two who end up showing in GoKyuuKyuu. She shows up in the GoGoV 5 episode. Her brother Sho shows up at the very end of the show when they're all getting their keys back.
Yeah.
I like the family dynamic. It really works for this show. There are some issues, and a lot of mine deal with Matsuri and how she is really brought about in this show, just because of the fact that she's the only girl. But this first episode is a really, really good setup to what we end up getting, for the rest of this. Their father has been missing for 10 years. Once they end up getting attacked by the Saima family, who are a family of demons. So you have family against family in this one. We love that dynamic, by the way. We'll talk about that more when we get to the themes at the end of this.
Yeah.
So the father ends up coming back because the Saima family ends up attacking on this first day, gives them their suits. Let's talk about the suits.
I like the suits.
I really like the suits.
I like the uniformness of it, but yet they're different in just enough ways to make them unique.
Like the visors.
The visors, and which we did not realize this first. They're all shaped like badges in different, and from different forms of public servants.
Yes,
which I think is really cool.
Yeah, like to have that homage to actual rescue workers is great.
I don't care if they work for the Umbrella Corporation.
Yes, they do work for the Umbrella Corporation, so watch out for zombies.
I like the use of gold as a secondary color. I usually don't. Or less, I guess in this case, a tertiary color to white. And I like the logo. I think it's a very simple but works logo. And
it sort of comes off like another rescue logo. Like when I first saw it, the immediate thought that came to me was like Blue Cross or Red Cross in this case. And like even though it's not like that, you can sort of get because of that blue when they first show up. It is that. I also love the way they end up transforming because they put on those fire retardant blankets.
That I admit that was a clever idea on paper, but I feel like with the
actual execution,
I think there were better ideas, and we will get more into that in comparison because I really like the way they do it in Lightspeed Rescue. Which didn't they change it to Lightspeed Rescues later down the line?
No, they kept the blankets.
Oh no, I'm thinking of SPD.
Yeah. Yeah,
sorry.
But I really like the way they ended up doing this one. I think it worked. The reason I ended up liking the blankets so much is because they are the fire retardant blankets, and one of the first things you see them doing is going into a burning building.
Right, I feel like the fire retardant blankets would be better for me if they were all firefighters, but they're not. So like an AMT just throwing on a fire retardant blanket just isn't the same. I can't think of the word.
Well, I mean, they all end up having the same basic rescue training.
True.
As you really end up seeing there in this first episode, they finally end up getting their mechs. They go into the building and everything.
Let's talk about their primary side weapon, their blaster baton
thingy.
Because it's not a sword.
Yes.
Let's put that. It's not a sword.
They are much more likely to shoot first than ask questions never. So
I can't remember if because I remember they did this in Lightspeed Rescue. Did they do the gun twirling?
No.
Is that just Lightspeed Rescue?
Yeah, that's Lightspeed Rescue.
I'm sorry, that was
fucking They might have. I can't remember.
That was fucking awesome. Episode. But they are definitely shoot first, ask questions maybe next week.
Yes. Now, to go into the actual Saima family, it's 3 siblings at the beginning and a 4th one who is a baby at the very beginning of the show. They're trying to bring back their mother.
Which, if any past Sentai has come to show us, that baby's going to grow up.
Yes.
Halfway through the show.
It's very true. We end up
be an asshole.
Yes, this is also extremely true. So we end up meeting Zilfiza, Kobolda, Dinas, who is the girl, and just I'm going to be extremely sexual. I'm sorry, she is a woman. She is just I'm going to be extremely sexual throughout this entire thing, and she's the only one who looks even remotely human. And the
no, I'm going to save that for the comparison.
Yes.
Moving on.
Drop, who is the baby, and he grows up later on to become Salamandas, Dragon Dark King Salamandas, and Pierre, who, I'll say this now instead of saying this next time for the next crossover, he's the only one who survives this entire show, and he actually ends up becoming a main part of the next show, unlike Mega Ranger, where they end up having basically a copy of Shibolena show up. But yeah,
I like the villain designs. The monster designs were pretty damn good.
They were very, very good, and I really like the fact that that family dynamic is so different between these two, extremely different, especially once the mother ends up coming back.
They definitely took the demon They saw the word demon and they ran
with that.
Jesus, they ran with it.
And also, I will end up saying this: the mother of the Tatsumi family did disappear about 8 years prior, and we'll talk about her more at the end of the review because she comes up again at the end of the show. Okay. I love the way that, after they end up rescuing the first groups of people, they really end up getting into their dad. Like, they just get, like, the children, and it's completely understandable, like, their frustration. Their dad's been missing for 10 years, and Matsui has been taking basic care of everyone by himself because their mother's no longer there either. Yeah. And they really end up getting into it with them. He was like, I went away because I knew that they were coming. That's not really explained exactly how, but
there's a perfectly good explanation for that.
You'll say? Oh, okay. But yes, that whole thing. I love that dynamic. Is like they're not okay with their father just suddenly coming back, and that works.
They have questions.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, my dad disappeared for 10 years, comes out back out of the blue. I'll have fucking questions.
Yes, and we end up getting introduced to their. Okay, first we actually do end up getting introduced to the train. The train is the carrier for the rest of the mechs. But then we end up getting introduced to the first Zord. Let's talk about the first Zord with...
We're going to cut here, I assume?
Yes. With a jump cut.
Their first Zord.
Yes.
Which...
I don't know. The only problem I really end up having with this one, because as you can see, this is basically just a legitimate representation of what it looks like in the show. That head is small.
True. I will give you that. But with the way it was designed with the head, that didn't bother me so much. What I do like about the Zord is that they use it practically in pieces. Yeah. As opposed to, here's the Zord, Megazord time. As they use it, like the red one will put out fires, the yellow one will go get people out of.
Blue will also put out fires. He'll mostly end up using his ladder arms and getting people out of buildings.
Yeah, it's practical.
And they use the helicopter so much throughout the show.
He deserves a raise.
Yes. And we do end up getting introduced to another character early on, an astronaut, who is up. She gets from space to ground really, really fast. I don't know what type of incoming velocity she has, but it's fast AF. So, but she ends up becoming, I can't remember her name, but she ends up becoming a sort of important character throughout the rest of the show because Green has a bit of a crush on her. So we end up seeing her a couple times, but she's actually useful. She has one episode later on where it was her, Red, and a little boy who end up getting trapped sort of in this forest, and they're being chased by the monster of the week. And she goes, and like Red is over there fighting off the monster, and they're being attacked by the minions. And she was like, I'm going to end up fighting these minions so the kid can get away. And I'm sitting here like, that's a sign of bravery. We don't end up seeing that often. I like you. Congratulations.
You're a woman and Marcus likes you. You've done something I didn't think was possible.
To be fair, I like a lot of women in a lot of these shows, but some of them are just like, okay.
Yeah, I'll give you that. Some of them are just like, why are you even here?
Basically. Now, the main part of the first arc, outside of getting this Megazord, there's another fight that ends up happening where we end up getting a big old Megazord. It's like, I think it's the biggest one that we have. It's a train, and it's our first train Megazord that we'll go to in this jump cut. This thing is huge, and I love it.
In comparison.
Yes. That's legitimately how it is in show. The first time this thing ends up showing up in the actual show itself.
The main Zord is in front of it, the monster's about the size of it, and this thing's just standing behind it like the kid who called his big brother for help, and he's just going, sup, bitches.
This thing is huge. And I love it, though, just because of the fact that scale is so real.
And Sentai will do this a couple other times from now on.
Yes.
Like with Deca Ranger and I think Magi Ranger too because of the Train Megazord. I can't remember how big that one was in comparison.
I don't think it was that big in comparison to this one.
But Jesus.
Yeah, this thing is very, very large.
And
it's the size of a small child.
And it is very well armed.
Yes. Its finisher is just a whole bunch of rockets.
And bullets. And
a fist. That's just about it.
And a train fist.
Yes. But I love it. I think it's great.
There you go.
Now, unfortunately, these are the only representations that we have because these are the only two that I own.
I don't own Megazords anymore.
Yeah. So we're going to go ahead and move this one.
Yeah, I got it. Anyway.
And he's just going to sit here like the small child that he is. You could be there too. Now, in the first couple of episodes, their mother, Grand Witch Grandian, is trying to come back from Earth as she's very, very, very far away. And she's trying to use minus energy to come back and power herself up to her actual form, or at least some sort of physicality.
Sounds about right.
She does end up coming back, but she's basically held inside of a cocoon with a face on it and tendrils coming out of it.
Yes. Because it's Japan, it has to.
Yes, if it didn't, I would be very, very worried.
Excuse me.
But in the first couple of episodes, it's like not a lot ends up happening, but we do end up getting to a certain point where Zilfiza, the oldest brother, he's basically, like, I like how they sort of have their own counterparts. I say sort of because I'm definitely going to end up putting that in quotations. He ends up coming in and he gets manhandled by the GoGoV a little bit. At the Chimera, he ends up fighting them and as a giant, and he overpowers Grand Liner and another mech that we didn't talk about, Liner Boy. This is the last one that we actually, I believe, that we get as a boy name, because usually the ones where they end up having a boy, they end up having some sort of consciousness inside of them. And the way that their father ends up describing Liner Boy is that he's basically their younger brother. And I'm saying like, that's weird, but okay. But Liner Boy ends up coming in. There's the first one, and he ends up. I'm gonna go ahead and just okay. So when Zilfiza ends up finally first fighting them, he ends up overpowering basically all three of them at one time. But Liner Boy and the Victory Robo end up combining to form the Max Victory Robo.
I like the Max Victory Robo only because it's kind of terrifying. How...
I also love the way they, when it first ends up coming up, there's a way that they end up using this one to really end up showing how technology has changed. Mm-hmm. Because you gotta remember, back then, they didn't end up really using a lot of CGI until post-Time Ranger. So there's that one scene where, after they first form into the Max Victory Robo, that they're sliding through the city and just shooting Zilfiza and everything and absorbing Zilfiza's attacks. I think it's great. I love that scene just because, as I said, I really like minor things like that. Mm-hmm. But seeing something like that in motion is always going to be pretty cool.
And the amount of guns that this thing has.
It has all of the guns.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Yes. And the Zilfiza ends up dying because he ends up getting shot with the Max Nova attack.
Which is just all of them at once.
Yes, which is all of them at once. And Zilfiza has a star in the middle of his chest when he first ends up showing up. And that star ends up being transferred because he was supposed to become the Demon King.
Right.
It ends up getting transferred to his younger brother, Drop, who was an asshole. But he ends up becoming Salamandez. Dragon.
Who was even more of an asshole.
Dark King Salamandez. I loved his voice. His voice was great.
Yeah, fair enough.
Now, not a lot ends up happening. We do end up getting the team up between Gingaman and GoGoV. Between this portion.
You know who I didn't miss? Gingaman.
Yeah. Still hate those suits. But I like how the team's
Charlie Brown. Charlie
I love the way the teams end up working in this one, because we finally end up, this is the first time they go with their counterpart color and fight with them. Which I think is great.
Back where you go.
Yes, you can sit here with your big brother. But I love the fact that that was the first time in this team up that we really got to see the two fight with their respective color.
Which is nice.
Which is always a good thing. I like that they made that a thing in some cases. Later on, they start doing it with gender, and you would think that they wouldn't end up doing that. They would just keep it with the color, but I guess not.
If the colors don't match.
Yeah. Episode 30, there's a gigantic meteorite coming to Earth. Grandian has been brought to the Earth at this point.
So now it's time to become rescuers in space.
They do go out to space very quickly with a new mech.
Space.
Having fun?
Yeah.
Okay.
I like this new mech.
Yes.
I feel like Green got got the short end of the stick by... It was like, what part of the Zord am I? You're the crotch.
Yes. Ryusei Gatai Victory Mars is their first one. This one looks like Optimus Prime. Or just we say that some of these things end up looking like Transformers. I mean, really look at his face. But
okay, I'll give you on that one. I don't know so much about this one. You know what my biggest problem with this one is?
What?
The arms are so skinny compared to the rest of it.
Yeah.
It's like he skipped arm day.
Yeah, it's like there are no shoulders like this one, or, you know, especially this one. But for the Victory Mars, I mean, I really like his finisher. It has the gigantic...
It looks more like that.
You're not wrong. But I really like the way that its finisher works.
Fair enough.
Because it has a gigantic rocket and shoots the rocket. It also has this walker formation.
I like the power... I don't know if you want to call it a power-up form, but the extra weapon they get with this, the lance, the V-lance.
Yeah, that's the one with the rockets on.
Yeah. I like those weapons. Those are cool.
Yeah. It's a jet lance in this one. I really like it. I also like its walker form they use when they first go to the meteorite, because this thing has sort of like a biofeedback loop on it that ends up connecting to the GoGo 5, and they end up, you know, being attacked by this thing. I really, really like the way that this, you know, gets introduced. It feels a lot more dire, and it's something that, because these two can't go out to space, well, they can with the help of the liner board, at least the Grand Liner can. And he ends up having the actual individual parts of the mech inside of it. And they end up coming out just like, you know, the smaller one does here. I really like the way that this just ends up looking. I really like the way this is introduced. I like that episode. It feels a lot more dire than
if only it didn't look like he skipped arm day.
Yes. He spent all of his time on his legs. He does like the opposite of anybody.
No, he does. He spends all his time on his legs and his pecs.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Got this.
Just don't ask me to lift anything.
It's hard. Damn it. But let's go ahead and skip up a little bit more. Well, let's go, because we're going to end up skipping up a lot. I mean, a lot.
This was a very filler episode. Had a lot of filler episodes.
There were a lot of fillers.
There was one great episode. I think we passed it by now.
Yes.
Where the villains were trying to get this disc.
Yes.
And they did not, none of the GoGo 5 knew what the fuck they wanted. And like they were like they kidnapped one of them, and Red did this gigantic overacting of, you really think I would give that up for my brother, like this? And they're like, what are they talking about? I have no idea.
GoGo 5 has some moments in this. Like there's one moment where I believe it is Diamond's like martial arts master ends up coming back, and there's this one scene where like his masters are showing up at the place where, you know, their family is getting together and everything. And he's like, master. And his master like goes like this. He's like, master. And his master just throws him. And Daimon lets out the best scream. He's like, ow!
There were just some great comedic moments in the show.
Like that happened. I had to rewind it because I just could not breathe.
No, we had to do the same thing with the, you really think I would give that up from my brother? What do they want?
I have no idea. But I just love that because I was not expecting that scream, but it was legitimately the funniest. I died for a good couple of minutes. I just wasn't ready for it. So when it came out of nowhere, because
you wouldn't expect comedy from a show like this. Yes. With characters like these. And so when you get moments like that, it's just, wow. Yeah,
it's like really, really funny. So let's go ahead and skip on a little bit. We'll get to Salamanders being like the big part of this. Now, their mother is terrible. Grandienne is terrible. Like, she's really terrible to her children. But the oldest, you know, two brothers and the sister, even though Zofisa is dead at this point, they do not like Salamanders because Salamanders thinks he's just so much better and more powerful than any of his other siblings, and he really lords that over them, even though they're so much older. And Salamanders is great. I love his voice. I love the way that he looks. But he is such an ass towards his family. And his mother is really no better. So he really ends up taking after her. Now, there's this whole, like, their plans are to bring their mother back to full fruition. Mm-hmm. And she is not happy with her family because they keep losing to the GoGo 5. Which is, you know, completely understandable.
Fair enough, yeah.
There's this thing called the Infinity Card. It's, you know, something that constantly ends up powering up people and everything, powering up the monster, bringing them back. And that ends up getting destroyed, and Salamanders completely falls out of favor with his mother, as he was allowed a very valuable weapon to be used against the Earth and GoGo 5 in general, and it ends up getting destroyed. And after that, he ends up trying to learn, well, he does end up learning the GoGo 5 to the Simon version of Hell. which does end up working in order to regain favor with his mother. But Grandian was like, okay, I'm tired of all y'all motherfuckers. I'm going to destroy the GoGo 5. And Salamandez,
I'm tired of all y'all motherfuckers.
It's just like, Salamandez just like, yeah, you're just, casualty. And so she traps them all in hell. Anyway, and all the monsters that the GoGo 5 had previously beaten are there. And they can't be killed, of course, because they're already dead. So the GoGo 5 end up having to run away. And they end up running into a cave. And in this cave, a light comes down, which ends up having a bell that Matsuri gave to their mother when they were much younger, before she ended up going on her, I got into a coma scenario right there. And this light ends up coming down, has about their mother, and ends up having their voice, and their mother ends up leading them out of hell to get back to the real world. Now, Salamandez, during this entire time, he ends up, with some help from Pierre, of course, Salamandez ends up killing all the hellbound monsters and absorbs them to become Ghost King Salamandez. The GoGo 5 ended up having a very, very difficult time fighting him because he's basically, through the use of the symmetry, also I will mention this as well, this is all during the Christmas episode. GoGo 5 does a really good way of actually doing a Christmas episode, though. They do it more like Go Busters, where it's still relevant to the plot.
Good, yeah, I remember.
And that's always a good thing because I really, really do not like a lot of the holiday-themed episodes. Look at Zyuohger for reference. But
Geki Ranger.
I hate Chris. Shut the fuck. But he ends up using the symmetry, Salamandez does, and it ends up trapping human souls in it, and they constantly end up feeding Salamandez more and more power. Now, I will end up saying this whole scene up to his actual death is almost perfect. It's just like they constantly have him do this. There's this little girl, and I really don't like when things are focusing on kids at all ever.
He doesn't.
But there's this little girl who, because they put the tree at an orphanage, and this little girl is outside constantly waiting for her mother, and Matsuri ends up coming along, which makes sense because of this one. Matsuri and the others are still waiting for their mother,
right? And
this little girl's also been waiting for hers. She's been at this orphanage for at least about 2 years or so by now. So I get it. You can see the look on Matsuri's face. She, had empathized with this child because she has gone through the same thing, just on a much larger scale. But she ended up having that support group of the rest of her family, minus her dad, to really end up balancing out this. But this little girl doesn't end up having anything, and I really like the way they ended up doing that. Now, one of the mothers, the mother of the little girl, does end up coming back, and of course, because this is still Japan, tears are the way to end up breaking any evil. Tears of love and joy and sadness and things like that. So she ends up crying on the tree, and the tree ends up breaking because she cried on the tree, and I'm just like, hey. And that's the way that the symmetry
Deus Ex Machina for the win.
Basically. Now, without the soul energy constantly feeding Salamandez, the GoGo 5 were able to use Max Victory Robo and Victory Mars to kill him with the top jet Max Cannon Mars player after impaling Salamandez with the Jet Lance combo.
Damn.
It's because
it takes a lot to kill this motherfucker.
Yeah. And this leaves a green gemstone behind. Now, over the next couple episodes, we'll skip to episode 47 because that was episode 43. In episode 47, this is when, of course, because we're nearing the end of the show, this is when the generals have to start dying. They end
about that time now.
Although in episode 46, Dinas ends up implanting a beetle or some sort of scorpion type bug onto Red, and I will tell you that was just all of my nightmares because they try to bring Zilfiza back, and they do in this case. They bring him back, and they're using the energy from Matoi to constantly end up powering up Zilfiza and making him come back to his full power. So there's the male one that Go Red has, and there's the female one that Zilfiza has, which is on his chest. And the energy is constantly going from the male one to the female one to constantly end up, giving Zilfiza his energy back. The way that they end up doing this in this show is terrifying because the scorpion itself is implanted in Matoi's chest, and I'm sitting here
why?
No. And he's constantly screaming and just in constant agony. His energy is being taken out of him. And the way that they end up beating it is the rest of the team. And I really like the way that this team works in this case because they don't always leave it up to Red. At least in most cases, because the only way that they end up saving Red in this case is the rest of the team goes off and shoots, the thing on his chest. And that's the way they end up beating Zilfiza. But because of the fact that Dinas and their brother Kobolda wanted to end up bringing back Zilfiza at his full power, Dinas ends up getting the scorpion that fell off of Red at this point, and she uses it on herself, and that energy ends up going directly into Zilfiza after the GoGoV shoots her in the back. There's one thing we didn't talk about. Actually, a couple things that we didn't talk about. We'll just talk about them now. Their arsenal. They have those V-Lancers.
Mm-hmm.
I like them.
Yeah.
They end up using them a couple times in different ways. They don't just end up using them as blasters or swords or anything. They also use them as wedges a few times to really end up getting them out. They also have the Life Bird, which can break into separate things that each GoGoV member can use. The Jaws of Life and things like that. What else did they end up... Nagare, who is also very smart. We'll talk about that more at the not the in comparison,
characters,
the character review in a couple of minutes. He ends up creating something for their blasters, and he ends up making a new blaster as well. I really like the way that this group ends up working. They also have the V brace because once again, that's a pullover from Mega Ranger and slightly from Gingham Man as well, where they get a slight power up and they become Kamen Riders. But that's the rest of our arsenal. Okay, now Dinas ends up dying in that episode. And in the next episode, I really I watched all of these this morning, the last 4 episodes. I really like episode 48. I think that's one of the strongest episodes the show had overall. Because by this point, Grandian did get her body back. She went into the center of the earth and absorbed all of the minus energy throughout the rest of the story. She got the minus energy back. Her actual body is back. She looks like, I don't know, mother-in-law, and like a demon, and in this case, she ends up telling Kobolda that he wants him to become the next Demon King because he hasn't actually died towards the GoGoV like Salamandez or like Zilfiza previously had.
You must become the king. You're the only one we got left.
Literally, the only one. Because Dinas is already dead. So he ends up going out. Ends up finding the GoGoV. Grandian ends up pulling them into their universe, which is near the North Pole, apparently. But they're sort of in a separate universe for the actual Simon family. And Zilfiza ends up coming back with them. And this is when things end up getting a little bit strange, or at least very weird, but also very, very powerful at the same time. Because Kobolda had basically a cannon that he was fighting against the GoGoV, right? And he ends up losing that after a little bit, and the GoGoV are constantly tackling him for some reason. That's the one thing I never got during this scene. Why are you constantly... Shouldn't you be shooting him? Or fighting against him, not just holding him in place? Because what's that going to do?
We're going to stop you!
It was so weird. But during this scene, Grandian ends up taking over Zilfiza, and Zilfiza's like, why are you making me shoot my brother? He's my brother. I legitimately love him. Why are you making me shoot my brother? And Grandian's like, okay. On the low, though, I never liked any of y'all.
On the low, though.
So, fuck
Stop
you.
Being a bitch.
She was like, basically, fuck you. And she made Zilfiza pick up the cannon and shoot his brother, killing Kobolda. And that's when, because throughout this entire thing, they're calling Grandian mother. And then, at the end of this, Zilfiza's like, no, Grandian. So he just starts calling her by name because he's just tired of her and everything that she ever did. And during this episode, it's like, Matsui was still recovering from being struck with that scorpion monster thingy. And
Which
he
is
comes
perfectly
in,
understandable. You take as much time as you need.
Yes. And Grandian ends up using Zilfiza to turn him into demon fire to really end up burning the rest of the GoGoV. And there's this one scene in this where Matsui ends up coming in and is just like, you have to stop her. I get your love for your family because she just made me basically lose the rest of mine. And I don't want that to happen to you. And that was the thing between Zilfiza and Matsui. And I'm sitting here like,
damn.
Okay. I get that. They're both the older brother. So seeing them having to really deal with between the two of them like that, I loved it. I thought that was just the greatest thing the show really could have done for itself. To actually make that connection, even though we're not supposed to feel sorry for Zilfiza, we do because he legitimately just lost the rest of his family.
Yeah.
And he doesn't want Go Red to go through that. And I love it. I think that's just the greatest thing this show could have done at this moment in time. They end up, Matsui ends up going up, and there's this scene where they're, like, the rest of the GoGoV are still being burned, and their suits are melting. Mm-hmm. I love that. I'm sitting here like, these are fire-retardant suits. That must be, like, super fire. In this case, demon fire.
Or time fire.
Yeah. So, Matsui ends up going up. He ends up punching the hell out of Grandian after beating off some of the minions for this season, and gets everybody out. And there's a scene where they end up getting back together. Grandian ends up coming into the real world. They end up shooting her down, and she's like, okay, I don't have a physical body anymore, but I'm okay with this. So she has a gigantic, she's basically just like a gigantic cloud of minus energy now. And she ends up using that. Pierre ends up coming in with Salamanda's gemstone. Right. She ends up bringing Salamanda's back, and Zilfiza back basically just as a mindless zombie at this point.
Zombie!
To fight for Salamanda's. And he does.
Had to be done.
But there's this one scene where there are some kids trapped in the building, and it is Matsuri, Daimon, and Matoi who ends up going to go save them. And Sho and Nagare end up going and distracting Salamanda's and Zilfiza. And there's this one scene where it's like, Zilfiza, why are you fighting us? You know, your brother ended up doing so many bad things to you. Your mother basically just turned you against everything that you ever loved in your life. And why are you still fighting us when you know who the bad guy is? And so he ends up trying to, like, because of the fact that I don't think the Salamanders thing really got through to him as much, but he understood that Salamanders was still his family. He doesn't really have much of a mind left, but he understood that that's still his family, that's his little brother. Salamander stabs the hell out of him, because as you do. Yeah, as you do. And the next scene is it's Grandian shooting down like a beam of energy towards Zilfi's, I guess, corpse in this case. And Salamanders and turns him into like the Armageddon beast.
Oh, yeah.
That's the last part of the show is them being turned into that. They end up defeating Victory Robo and Max Victory Robo and Liner Boy and Grand Liner and the Victory Mars. And the last thing on this is... Now, here's the biggest problem I had with the end of the show, because it was a legit ass pull with the way that they end up bringing in the last mech that they end up using to really end up beating everybody, because their father, like a gigantic wave had come behind their base, and like it seems like their father and the head of the fire department were both being wiped away, and like the base has been destroyed and everything. And the girl who I mentioned earlier, the astronaut, ends up handing over to Matsuri and Daimon like this, hey, you had to go to this place, there's a new mech for you. It's the Max Victory Robo Sigma project, which is basically Max Victory Robo but black with a red sword. And that's the way they end up beating Grandian at the end of the show. And
because we wrote ourselves into a corner.
We really did. And they find out that their mother is in a coma, and at the very last shot is the entire family getting back together and, just living out their lives as a family again.
And they go back to their respective jobs. And...
Yeah, because he ended up getting the fire from it at the very beginning. And the GoGoV ended up becoming their new jobs, but they still ended up being paid by the state, so, who cared? But I really liked the show as a whole. There were some parts in it that were a drag to get through. But once you got to the last about 15 episodes of the show, of this show, it really ended up stepping up.
It did.
And I like the way that they ended up actually doing the rest of the show in itself. I love the theme of, the family versus the family, and really those two families end up understanding each other through Zilfiza and Matsui at the very end. Yeah. I thought that was great. Let's go ahead and get onto these characters. Matoi, go red.
He was alright.
He was the big brother. And he really made himself the big brother.
Yeah.
He basically ended up becoming the surrogate dad after their dad left originally. He really tried to always be in charge, but it didn't always end up working. They ended up having some things early on where they had to really end up learning how to be by themselves again, because I assume at that point they really hadn't been living together since they got to their respective jobs. Mm-hmm. And they sort of ended up coming back together. And he ended up trying to take charge again, just like that's not always going to end up working anymore. We're our own people. You can't just tell us what to do all the time. And Matoi really had to dial back his, I guess, bullishness and make himself, become a leader, but not an asshole. That's the main thing. I liked his character, but he did end up feeling a little bit cut and dry.
Yeah.
That's the main problem. Moving on to Nagare, Go Blue, he was extremely smart.
Yeah. He
made a lot of weapons. He ended up trapping Dinas a few times. He made a security system. He's basically he takes a lot after their dad. And that's sort of a good thing. I really like the way that, he ends up working. He tries to be as smart as he can. There are a couple episodes where, like, when they were younger, his siblings end up getting hurt, and he blames himself for it. But it's just like, no, it's not your fault. This is just me being an idiot. That's at least what his siblings said. And I really like the way that his character ended up working. He is the second in command of the team, and he takes that role very seriously, but he's not nearly as bad as some of the other, as his older brother. Show. Show is whiny. He is so whiny. It's just like, yes, you're a helicopter pilot, and you're a damn good one, but you are very, very whiny through a lot of this show. And that's sort of a problem. I didn't really like his character, like, at all. It was fine, but it's just like, go away. Diamond, go yellow. I liked him. The fourth and last son, he was very excitable. And because he is the youngest son of this one, so he's very hot-headed. He ends up rushing into things before thinking and getting into trouble. As I said earlier, he ends up getting injured in one of the missions where he runs in and gets extremely injured in an explosion, and that's the whole thing with his older brother Nagare when they end up were younger and he ends up getting injured at that. But I still liked him. As I said, that episode with his master was like he had that moment of comedy gold that I wasn't ready for, so I really liked everything with him. Daimon, while I don't really end up liking characters like this so much, it wasn't nearly as bad in this one, but he was sort of a loud yellow. And that's not, a good thing. As I said before in my rant about loud reds. Matsuri. She was the girl. That's legitimately the issue I have with her character, because she had some moments where she was just like, okay, I'm going to end up taking charge and everything, but then they end up having other moments where she's just like, this thing is so cute. Yay! I'm like, okay, you legitimately have other layers to your character. But I don't know, they made her seem a little bit weaker than some of the other ones, and that's a lot of the problem I have with a lot of the other females in Sentai. Like, they didn't make Tsuruhime and Kamen Ranger a weak girl. The whole story really revolved around her. So I'm just like, they made her bad.
Why would you go back to doing that?
Yeah. They end up fixing this next season with Time Pink, because we get to that. That'll be a thing. But, yeah.
Jesus Christ, Time Pink.
But I really liked her. Natsuri was fine. One thing we didn't talk about, we did not talk about the movie, the GoGoV Movie, when Keiichi Wada ends up coming back and plays Demon Hunter C, who is definitely their 6th Ranger, because this show is the last one without a 6th.
Yeah. There's
no 6th or adjacent Ranger in this one. So this is the last time that we do end up getting a non-6th Ranger season. So, but Demon Hunter C was fine. I really liked him because, of course, it's Keiichi Wada. And as we all know, Ryu Ranger can do no wrong. So, but yeah, GoGoV was a good show.
It was alright show.
It's better than Gingaman. At least in our opinion.
Yeah, in our opinion, it was a nice follow. It was a refreshing follow-up after Gingaman.
Yes. That is the truest statement we could have ever said. But I really liked it. I thought that it had low moments.
It had low moments, but it had good character interaction, good character chemistry with family dynamics. Mm-hmm. It had aesthetically pleasing suits and aesthetically pleasing Zords.
Yes. One thing we need to talk about in the suits, though, is that they have the faceplate, yeah.
But there's the mask, or
there's like the breathing mask and everything inside of it. You can always see into the actual suit itself, see their faces, which I don't think any other team has done since. But I guess because in this case they're
I would say some have, just not to the degree that GoGoV did it.
Because they're public servants, so their faces are well known.
Hurricaneer.
Yeah, that can open. But yeah,
I feel like we saw the inners of the mask in Go Busters a lot. But anyway,
GoGoV is still a really good show. I feel like it's underrated.
It is.
Because you don't really end up you see a lot of more people talking about what came immediately after with Time Ranger.
Yeah.
For good reason, but still.
But It was the final Sentai of the 90s, and I think it went out on a good note.
Yes.
And now the next question we have to wonder is, who did it better? Saban or Toei?
Yes. And in comparison for next, we're going to be doing GoGo 5 versus Lightspeed Rescue.
This is going to be an interesting one.
Yes, very, very interesting. I'm excited for it. And be sure to tune in for the next episode because we're going back to Kamen Rider with Kamen Rider Kuuga. And I'm excited.
I am so excited to go back to Kamen Rider. I'm sorry. I like Sentai. I do. I especially like Q Ranger and where it's going so far. But I love Kamen Rider. But that's been our review of GoGo 5. Tell us what you think. As always, tell us what you think in the comments.
Yes.
Follow us on Twitter, like our Facebook page. We're almost at 100 likes on Facebook.
Yes. Keep liking it.
We are at 50 followers on Twitter.
Keep following.
Keep following it. I'll try to post more. I'm the one in charge of the Twitter account. I'll try to post more, maybe pictures and stuff. It's just I haven't had the time. But I hope you've enjoyed the video. As always, like and subscribe. We will see you guys next time. Bye, everybody.
Bye.